I think we get
All right, we're good to go.
good. All right, so start sharing my screen and let me know once you guys are able to see it. Um, second. All right, are you guys able to see the Google Docs screen?
Yep.
Yep, I
Yep,
can
Cool.
see it.
yep,
Awesome. So let's start
yep.
the slideshow then. All right, guys. So, as I was saying, we are today going to discuss about how to deploy static websites on AWS. Just going to introduce a little bit. I'm sure many of us are already aware, but just to make sure that we set the foundation right, we're going to talk about a few basics, and then we'll do a demo. So my name is Sandeep. As I mentioned, I'm co-lead with Erin for Vancouver Code chapters, and the agenda for today, as I was mentioning, we are going to talk about static versus dynamic website. What are the two, these are two major kind of categories for website, web apps, and what are the differences between them? How you can use AWS for kind of like web hosting, and then different parts of web hosting, what goes into, how does others on internet can find your website. So we'll talk about domain name service. That is one thing that we use to find websites or to track IP addresses with websites. And then if you create your website here in Vancouver, let's say I'm in Vancouver right now, but my customers or my members or the users of my website, they are sitting in let's say Cambodia or India for that matter. How is my website is going to be displayed over to them, and how quickly? We're going to talk about that content delivery network, and then different ways that we can use to use AWS to deploy our static website. We'll do demo, as I mentioned, and then towards the end I'll tell you a few tutorials that I found online that kind of help me in understanding how to do this entire process, maybe like a more structured way. If you want to follow, we're just going to touch from very high level today. So yeah, that's the agenda. But before we move forward, I have a survey for you guys. If you can maybe use your phone and scan this QR code. We just basically it's left like a 4 or 5 or maybe like 4 question survey, just to make sure that we are aware about who all are attending our sessions, and what you guys are interested in learning more through these sessions. So I'll give you guys maybe a minute or two to scan this QR code, and because we are like maybe like 3 or 4 of us, you guys can let me know once you guys are done. Sorry, let me just start this slideshow again. And here's the QR code. My bad. I have already like tried it twice, but I don't want to skew the results just by giving my entries. So I'll let you guys work on that. And if you guys are done, just let me know so that we can move forward.
Yeah, I finished it.
Cool. Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah, no worries.
Let me see. I'm trying to.
All right. Thanks, Dimitri. And all right. So I think Erin, were you able to do it as well? I think you're on mute, but
Yeah, I'm about to load the page. It's
okay.
loading.
Okay. Cool. So I'm going to move on to the next slide, but let me know if anybody else needs the QR code, or if somebody else joins afterwards, then we can do that. So we're going to talk about static website to begin with. What is a static website? There are different kind of websites out there, as I was saying, static and dynamic. So the basic features of static website are that the code, the entire code and the structure and the content of the static website is hard coded, is fixed. It is, whether Brendan sees it or whether I see it or whether Dimitri sees it, the static website is going to display or look same to all of us. And that means all users see the same content. It is not different or dependent based on where you're seeing the website from, or um, how you're interacting with the website. So everybody sees the same content, and it is built independently without connecting to a database. You can connect it to a database, but with static website, it is a possibility that even if you don't want to connect a database, or there's no database at the back end, it would still work, because it's basically the kind of like the front page of your whatever you're trying to display, a blog, or maybe your business website, your resume website, your portfolio website, and stuff like that. So simple to make, but the content and structure is kind of fixed. And over here, basically, sorry, there are like three type of files that basically go with it. I think actually even with one type of file it would work, the HTML file, but the standard outside, just with the HTML file, we know that it just looks very raw. So you need like CSS or JavaScript to brighten it up, or to beautify it, if you will. So yeah, there are these kind of different files that you need to use to interact, to create a static website. Then there are some examples here. Wikipedia is one, where whosoever sees Wikipedia, if they're searching for, let's say, software programming, it's going to display the same content, whether they are searching from Thailand or whether they're searching from, Norway. So it doesn't depend on user. Other thing that we web developers are very much familiar with is Mozilla Development Network documents, web docs. That's one. And then yeah, towards the end, I just want to talk about the basic structure, or the basic flow of data in a static website. So a user, wherever they are sitting, they want to access the website using web browser. They send a request to a web server, which could be anywhere, on the cloud, on-prem, whichever way you want to put it. The web server then eventually sends the response back to browsers. So basically you are seeing that it's like a closed loop, and there's no processing of data that is happening. It is just requesting that this is what I need to see, and web server provides the web browser with whatever the request is. So that's the static website. And just want to pause there for a second and see if anybody has any questions from this one. No. Simple website, static website. We go through them on day-to-day basis, but also we are seeing many dynamic websites in last few days. And so what are dynamic websites as compared to static? They have the flexibility of content and structure. The structure changes based on who is interacting with the dynamic website, or how you're interacting with it. If you're using on maybe on a laptop, your display or structure would be a little different. But if you use it on your phone, mobile phone, or your smartphone, then the structure would be a little different. The content would be a little different. Also, you can use dynamic websites to maybe customize user experience. So let's say a good example is that Code Academy. I could be working on data analysis course, or Brendan could be working on the front end development course. So both of our contents would be different based upon what the user is trying to interact with, or which page the user is interacting with. So the dynamic website are very interactive, and they continuously change based on how the user is based on how the user is kind of playing around with the dynamic website. And then it typically process requests. So every time you're clicking on something in a dynamic website, there's a request that runs on the back end, and it displays the results after processing your request to the front end. So that's what is basically going on. So there's a lot of processing that goes into dynamic website as compared to static websites. And then in dynamic websites, you can also pull the content from external databases and content management systems such as your WordPress and Joomla and few other Drupal that are out there. So you can store the information in database and you can pull it from there, display it on front end, and all of this could be based on how your user is interacting with the website and what is it that you want to show to your user based on what whichever feature or whichever piece of the website they're interacting with. So there are a few examples here. Twitter, let's say somebody follows like different kind of accounts on Twitter. I follow different kind of accounts on Twitter. The display, the content that we both are going to see is going to be different based on whatever we have liked or whatever accounts we are following, and all. Same goes for Amazon.com. If I buy a book and it's gonna look at my previous history and then process that, maybe recommend me books or recommend me some other product. So that is kind of like a dynamic website based upon how you would interact with Amazon. It would give you like different kind of results, if recommend different results, if you will. And then we also talked about Code Academy. So these are like few examples. And then if we talk about the way the data flow of a dynamic website, there's a web server sitting in the middle. We have a client on the right, which is nothing but could be like a system or could be like a browser on one end. But on the other end, it is not like a closed loop anymore. It is like a feedback that is going from web server to database server. A request goes from web server to database server to request the data, and then to retrieve the data. Then it retrieves all the data from database and then displays it on the client or web server on the front end. So basically, you see there's an interaction going on between database, and you can even replace that with a CMS system. But this is just just to give you an example of what dynamic website is. So now we're going to talk about just cover very high level features of static versus dynamic. Static is easier to host, cheaper to host, and you can even host it for free using GitHub pages. But because on dynamic side, there's a lot of processing that needs to happen. So because there's more processing that needs to happen, there's going to be higher cost associated with it. With content management on static website, you can just use like basic coding skills such as I mentioned, HTML or Markdown, and you can get started with a static website. But on this one, on dynamic side, you need to maintain, you need like a CMS or a database system to maintain your content. And these are like few of your popular CMS systems. Extensibility, there are not much add-ins that you can add to your website, but there could be like third-party services that you can integrate into your static website. So let's say you want to put a link out there that somebody can buy you a cup of coffee, so you can set up like Stripe on Stripe's website, and then you can integrate into your static website. On the dynamic side, there's a lot of tools and add-ins that you can use to extend the functionality and to optimize your websites. If we talk about security, static websites can be quite complex and can be exploited because the JavaScript file or the file, even the JavaScript or HTML, but basically these days we are seeing that JavaScript is the basic one that is running on the client side. So you need to think about security in a creative manner. But on the dynamic side, there are best practices, there are libraries, tools that are included in your server-side languages that you use to create dynamic websites. So it is already a little bit more secure, if you can put it that way. Then it is static websites are very easy to restore because they're at the end of the day, they are just files. You can easily back them up on an object storage or deep archive, whichever way you want, even on your local. But on the other hand, the dynamic websites, they are complex. In addition to, you also, if you need to do a backup, you need to take a backup of the website, but at the same time, you need to take a backup of your content management system or your, whatever the backend database is running. So these are the major differences. I just want to, make sure that we know what static website and dynamic website is, and then we can move further with it. So now, in order to find, somebody, your website, your website needs to be hosted somewhere. It needs to run on certain kind of infrastructure that somebody, once they put, like, let's say codeacademy.com, it takes you to a certain page and not to a different page, not to Google when you put codeacademy.com. So, all this infrastructure is being maintained on the backend by AWS. And there are, we're just gonna basically cover how you can use AWS for web hosting, and what are the basic features of AWS web hosting. So it has a broad platform support. It provides, support for or integration for a variety of CMS, all the ones that we discussed earlier. It supports and provides SDKs for popular platforms like Java, Ruby, PHP, Node.js, .NET. So basically with this, you can, this tells you that you can host both the static and the dynamic kind of websites on AWS easily. They are available worldwide, so they have a global reach. So, if you deploy your websites in Canada, let's say, you can actually reach your customers in Singapore and whichever part of the world you need to, because leveraging the AWS global infrastructure. And then you have access to all the AWS services, which we will cover in future. And we talked about it last time as well, that it gives you a lot of flexibility and a lot of advantage to scale from day one. You have access to global reach, but at the same time, you have access to all these additional services that AWS offers. So your infrastructure could be elastic and can, grow and shrink based on the demand of your website, or how many people are accessing the website. And then on AWS, they're like flexible pricing models. There's no upfront cost. Otherwise, in previous times, if you need to host or host your website, you need to buy a web server. So you had the upfront cost, and then you had to commit to this web server company for like longer time. But not anymore. With AWS, you only pay for what you use. And if your website is not being visited much, then your AWS bill will be quite low. But if your website is popular, which is like a good problem to have, so your bill will be a little bit high, but eventually, there are ways that you can kind of save money. And along the same lines of saving money, there's like a fixed monthly pricing model as well, that if you know that you are going to incur a certain amount of cost while hosting your websites on AWS or web apps on AWS, you can opt for maybe like a fixed monthly pricing model, and then your usage could be more or less, but your monthly pricing could be fixed. So yeah, before I cover all the other slides, just want to pause there for one quick second and see if anybody has any questions up till now, and if I can maybe clarify a few things.
I ask a quick question? Why would say you're a webmaster, you want a website, why would one choose to use AWS versus like an old school traditional web host like Bluehost or HostGator or something like that? Like, why would someone make the decision instead to move to AWS?
So I think, as I mentioned, these are one of the major reasons that the BlueGator, if you talk about that, or Bluehost, HostGator, and Blue something else, I forgot the name. If you're going to host with them, let's say if you are hosting a website on in Canada or in Vancouver, but your customers are sitting in Singapore or Thailand, it is going to take a lot much time for data to travel to your customers, because they do not have servers on a global network, whereas AWS has, and they have like infrastructure already laid out for businesses. In addition to just the global reach, as I mentioned, you get access to all these like AWS services, which all the originally not none of the other hosting platforms is kind of offering the kind of services that AWS offers. And like if you're creating your dynamic website, let's say you have access to database, which is going to be in your AWS environment, right? You can do some kind of analytics on AWS. And then you can display the same result in your website. And with all that, what is happening is your data is not leaving the AWS network. So it is not going to incur much cost, but still you will be able to scale and be able to meet the demand as it comes. So I think these are a few things that I can think of.
So last time when we met in December, you mentioned that they had availability zones and regions. So when say I signed up, I would, for example, sign up to AWS. Wouldn't I have to select an availability zone or a region that I would want to deploy my dynamic website in? And then in that case, since it's only being deployed in one specific region of the world, wouldn't that have the same limitation of like a traditional web host then?
No, because AWS, in addition to regions and availability zones, there's another thing that we are going to cover in a few slides, which is called content delivery network. It's a service called AWS Cloudfront. So it offers like edge locations. So you don't need to actually deploy your website at different locations. You can actually keep it deployed at one point, but you can broadcast it or you can cache it at other edge locations. And that is the kind of infrastructure that AWS provides, which others do not. I mean, at the same time, Google Cloud and Azure is there, but we are talking about like other previous models of hosting and now the cloud hosting, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah. So
okay, yeah, I'd be love to learn about that. Thank you.
It's not just on one channel, the websites get cloned to all the data centers.
It is not that the website gets cloned to all the data centers. Website stays at one data center at one location, but then it can be cached at different locations. Yeah, and we're going to cover like that caching piece also in a while. So hopefully, that will answer a few more questions as well. So as I was mentioning that, for a website to be found online, it's a directory kind of thing that, that internet uses that matches the domain name that you have to purchase, or you already have your domain name, which could be like, www.example.com. That could be like a domain name for a website. But for computer to understand the domain names, they don't understand words. They understand numbers. So rather than, for computer to find out how to reach example.com, there is an IP address that is associated with the example.com, right? And you get this from your domain name registrar. When you register your domain with a domain name service, you get a link that you have selected and then an IP address attached to it. So think of domain name service as a directory that the computer refers to translate a text-based website, which is example.com website address, into an IP address which it can understand. So if we talk about those data flows, eventually the computers are what communicating between different systems, right? So they need to understand which website are you looking for. So you entered example.com, but on the back end, it transposes into an IP address and it goes into DNS and it pulls all the content from there, or matches the IP address with the website address, if you can. So in order to get your website address, you need to buy your domain name from domain name registrar. And there could be many. There's GoDaddy out there. There are others as well. Amazon also has a service called Route 53. So you see, when we are talking about all these services that Amazon offers, they have like a closed ecosystem that you don't actually need to go out of this. Most of the things, if you they're not easy to work with, but the entire ecosystem is there, that if you understand, you can make things work just with the AWS one subscription. So you don't have to go to like different websites to set up your website, as it used to be earlier. So if you what happened to me was that I bought a domain from one of the other registrar, and then transferred it over to AWS few months back, but then I forgot which one I bought it from. So just want to put this one link out there, that you can use this link to see who your domain name registrar is, if you somehow forget, or if you don't remember, or if you don't have those details. So it gives you a lot more detail about your whichever domain you want to talk about or you want to find about. So just a helpful tip if it ever happens to you. Happened to me today, so I thought it'll be good to put it out there. And then each domain name is unique. So I cannot, now that the codeacademy.com has been purchased, I will not be able to go out and buy same codeacademy.com domain. I mean, I'm just going to make it up, but maybe I will be able to buy codeacademy.org, codeacademy.xyz, codeacademy.io, but the codeacademy.com domain name is purchased by Code Academy team, and you will not be able to purchase that. So with that, the domain names are going to be unique for all. And then there are different benefits of using Route 53. Again, because it's on the AWS infrastructure, it is going to be highly available and reliable. You can completely rely on this, that it will, there are 99% chances it won't go down. And it has been up and running for maybe a few years now, and there has been problems with it, but there have hardly been like problem that it would just halt the business altogether. And then it is simple, it is fast and cost effective to use Route 53, and it is obviously designed to integrate with other AWS services on the infrastructure. So that's the domain name service. And the next one is what we're going to talk about, the global content delivery network. This is what I was mentioning to earlier. The service name is called AWS Cloudfront. And how does it help in keeping your or maybe hosting your website in one region or AZ, but then having it available in the entire globe. So we have this global content delivery network, which makes it easier to cache information, because if it's a static website, it doesn't have to be changed, or it doesn't have to be altered every now and then. So let's say one person from India accessed my website, which was hosted in Canada. Now the global content delivery network, CDN, is going to cache this website in the closest edge location to India, which is actually in India at different parts, but sorry, but it's going to cache the information, cache the website closest to the network or the edge locations in India. And then all the static content can be cached to edge servers, which makes it, which makes the information accessible at a faster rate. The edge servers get distributed in the different geographical locations. There are more than 310 plus globally dispersed locations. So you see, like, you have further more reach. You launch your website in one of the region, but you have further more reach to reach global network with this content delivery network. And but doing the same thing for a dynamic website would be very tricky, because the content keeps on changing. With each click the user clicks, the content keeps on changing. So it's not easy to host it on CDN. You can do it, but there will be limitations, right? You might actually see more latency rather than less. So CloudFront or this delivery network is useful basically for static websites, but dynamic can be done, not preferable though. And then also there's like a security risk that you are caching users' private information. Let's say, if you're talking about Amazon, your credit card information is all going into Amazon network, right? So when you go to the purchase, so you're kind of keeping the user's private information on the edge locations, which is not secure and it is not recommended. So that is also one reason why it could be trickier with the dynamic websites. And then this cloud delivery network for static websites, it would improve security by using traffic encryption and access control, making sure that if you want to launch it in Asia, let's say you only want to display certain pages to your customers from India, and you want to show a certain kind of pages from your customers to from Singapore. So you can control all that kind of dynamic nature of a static website. So it gives you a little bit of more room to play around with your website. So that's the global content delivery network CloudFront. It is quite amazing how you can launch your website or host your website in one region and then reach out your customers all across the globe. Yeah. Just want to pause there and don't want to rush things, but any questions from anybody? Hopefully, the last questions that we had from how the content is delivered, or hopefully that gets resolved with this explanation a little bit.
I just had a question about this. So is the only way then to, if you like registered for the CloudFront service on Amazon, is the only way that you could host your website or cache your website, so to speak, on an edge, is the only trigger if someone in that region tries to access your website? Or could I say when I sign up for AWS, could I say to please cache my website and say, Europe and Asia, or like, can I do that?
So if I understand correctly, you're asking that before somebody asks for my website, can I cache my website in that particular region?
Yeah, like proactive that it's going to happen.
So I think yeah, there's an option that you can voluntarily cache in a particular region, and then
Okay.
for the first person who's going to cache it there in that region, they won't feel any latency in accessing data. Yeah, there's an option.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also, what about, so if I were to sign up on AWS, is like CloudFront like a certain service, or is it like an add-on? Like, do I have to buy like if does the process where like I would sign up for say Cloud Sale or S3, and then there'd be like a checkbox, do I also want CloudFront? Is that how it works?
So once you create your account on AWS, it's gonna give you a free tier for maybe a year in which few of the services are free. But at the same time, you have access to all these services, right? Some of the services, let's say Redshift and stuff, they are going to be paid. You have to pay for them. This particular website, CloudFront and S3, they are free of cost, and they don't charge you for setting up different CloudFront networks, if you will.
Okay.
So it comes with the cost. You don't have to pay extra, and but there are other services, not CloudFront, other services in AWS for which you have to pay extra. For example, databases and data warehouses and servers, obviously servers as well, right?
Okay, so like CloudFront is built into the cost of S3 or Lightsail?
Not, I won't say built into S3. It's a different service in itself, but you can use it without paying anything extra.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You just need to make sure your things match between backend, what you want to display, because what CloudFront is doing is it's displaying a certain item from your database or from your S3 bucket. So you just need to tell it what it needs to be displayed at a particular point so that, it displays the correct information, and that's all. So you need to make sure these settings match, but otherwise you don't have to, um, you don't have to sign up for this service separately. That's what I was saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for explaining that.
Sure. Yeah. All right. So then we're going to talk about like how to host websites on AWS. We're going to talk about like I think there are 4 different ways that you can host websites. To start with, we're going to talk about very simple static website, which you can do using Amazon S3, which is like an object storage service from AWS. So static websites, as we know, that they deliver HTML, JavaScript, and additionally they can, we didn't cover it last slide, but obviously static websites can have video, it could have images, or it could have other files associated with it. There's no server-side application code, so there's nothing being processed on server-side, like using PHP, ASP.NET, or Python, or Java, or anything of that sort. So everything is being processed on the client side, in the browser. And it is typically used to deliver maybe like personal or like marketing websites. Again, we know what static websites are from the previous discussions. So I'm not going to go deep on those, but it is basically used for like personal or very marketing websites. What are the few of the features of hosting your website on S3? One is that it is going to be a very, very low cost. I will tell you one personal story in a short while once we go through a few things. But yeah, very low cost, and it provides high levels of reliability. S3 offers like 11 nines of availability, 9 nines of availability. So that means it's available like 99.99999% of the times. So quite reliable. And this is, this is the other thing that AWS offers, this kind of robust architecture that you can rely on, whereas the other hosting platforms like HostGator and other, they do not publicize. They are reliable, but they are not as reliable as S3 is, or AWS services are. And then you don't require any kind of like server administration if you're hosting on S3. And then it can be scaled to handle enterprise level traffic with like no additional work. Just keep your website there, and doesn't matter if there's a spike in the demand or spike in the traffic to your website, it's just going to scale automatically, and there's not going to be any like latency for each user. And the other thing is what these static websites are best for infrequently changing websites with few authors. So let's say, I maintain my personal portfolio website. So there's only like few people, me and maybe like my mentor who has access to this, website. So the content is not changing frequently, and the content is staying the same for whichever user is on the other side, just like a static website, right? And then again, for any kind of like occasional intervals of high traffic, it is going to help you scale easily. And it is best for those customers who do not want to manage the infrastructure. They just want to put their content out there and then forget about it, and then let Amazon or AWS take care of all the infrastructure needs. And then the next one is hosting simple websites. So it could be dynamic as well, static too. You can use that. You can use AWS Lightsail to host your dynamic or your static website. But again, simple is the keyword here. So we'll talk about what simple is. So simple websites consist of like single web server, or maybe like a few web server, which runs either your CMS such as WordPress. It runs either your e-commerce application, a lightweight e-commerce application such as Magneto, or let's say not not SAP ERP. It's a quite heavy application. So Marketo is another one that you can use as an e-commerce application example. The other thing that it helps in running is development stacks. So very nimble development stacks like LAMP, Mean, or Node.js. Those kind of development stacks can also be run on Lightsail, but again, not like complicated applications such as Amazon websites, such as Costco website, Twitter. They won't be able to run on Lightsail because there's not just single web server. There are going to be plenty of web servers running on the backend. And obviously, managing all this software makes it easy to build, update, manage, and serve website content. And Lightsail is kind of like that software that makes the life easier for people who want to use it. And then it is best for low to medium traffic websites, so that that there's not going to be like a huge spike in your website traffic. And there are like multiple authors. Many people are pushing their content over to the website at one time, and so there are going to be like frequent content changes. And any websites that are unlikely to scale beyond 5 servers. So I think 5 is kind of like the sweet spot, that if you have 5 servers or less, you can use Lightsail, but more than that, there are other services that you should be using. And for customers who want to manage their own web servers and resources, Lightsail is a great alternative for AWS services. And then customers who want kind of like a console to manage their web server, manage their DNS and networking, all of that can be done in Lightsail. So in addition to S3, where you load your website into a bucket, you can do a lot more in Lightsail. So just a personal story here, when I mentioned that S3 is very low cost, I had my, when I started, tackling around with how to host websites on AWS, I used AWS Lightsail. So somehow I, happened to find my way on this tutorial that was showing how to use Lightsail. So I had a very simple website that I put up online using Lightsail. But then over the period, every month it gives you a bill. After, as I was mentioning in the beginning, 12 months, you will have a free tier. But then after those 12 months, you will start receiving bill from AWS based on the services that you have availed every month. So I started seeing like, a particular charge, not a whole lot, maybe because it was a static website and it was just very, very basic website. So maybe like a few dollars, maybe like $3 or $5, something like that, every month. But then, for a few months, I was like, it's okay. I was happy that at least my content is online. But then after a few months, I realized that I have already incurred like, at least $50 for this Lightsail bill, but I haven't seen much traction, or, I don't see many people or much traffic coming to the website. So maybe I should find an alternative way, one, to attract more traffic. Obviously that's a good strategy to have, but at the same time, how can I save money by hosting static website in a cheaper way? And that's when I moved my website to S3. And since then, where I used to pay like $5, I pay bill like 18 cents or maybe 30 cents every month. So there's like a lot of difference, as you can see. So that's why, again, if you have like a very simple website, use S3. But if you have like a little bit of dynamic website, then I would recommend using Lightsail. So going to pause there for a second and see if anybody else has any questions or has any doubts. All right, we'll take silence as no then, and we'll move. But feel free to stop me if you guys, feel like it's going fast, or you have a question in between. We can talk about that. So the next service that we're going to talk about is AWS Amplify. And what Amplify does is it helps in hosting single page website or applications. So up till now, we talk about a static website or dynamic website using Lightsail, but now you can also use Amplify for single page websites or single page applications. So there's a little bit of interaction that you can do if a user wants to do on your website. You can use AWS Amplify for that. So we'll see how this one works. So static web apps that require only like single load in a web browser, it loads once and then it depends upon how the user is interacting with the website after that. Let's say you open an ERP application, for example, Salesforce, right? It's a huge application, but just to take that as an example, it loads once, but then it depends upon where the user clicks. That's how it is going to load the next page or load the next interaction. Also, the recent survey that you guys did at the beginning of the slides, that was I created that on Typeform. So that website Typeform is also hosted on AWS Amplify, because it loads once and then whatever the future interactions are, it depends upon how the user is interacting with the system. And the backend database, because now there's an application here, there will be a backend database also involved. It can be accessed using maybe graph query language. It's like a query language that you can use to access data from backend, or from REST APIs. And I'm not going to elaborate on these, but I think it'll be good to maybe touch base on these things once, maybe in future sessions. Yeah, so GraphQL or REST APIs that fetch content from from your backend data store, and then they update the UI based on whatever the request was. So AWS Amplify or single page website or applications, they are best for websites that built with single page app frameworks such as React.js, Vue.js. I am kind of alien to these frameworks myself, but I'm sure others can relate that how applications are in React.js and Vue.js. Also, the websites created from static site generators, SSDs, which are also pretty new things for me. I'm kind of like new to web development, so still getting myself familiar with this dynamic structure of the website and web applications. But yeah, there's like static site generators such as Gatsby, React Static, Jekyll that you can use to create like single page applications or websites. Websites that have serverless backends, they can also be used, deployed using AWS Amplify. And those websites that do not contain any kind of like server-side scripting, but everything happens on the client side itself. So those are the other kind of applications that you can use. So that means static websites, yeah, are the other things that you can use, deploy using AWS Amplify. So this is another service that I recently came across with AWS Amplify. Before this, I wasn't aware of this, or maybe I wasn't just familiar, didn't spend much time. But then, it was the experience of deploying a website with AWS Amplify was actually much better than even with S3. And we'll hopefully we'll get time to, walk through all of that. Wow, we have already covered 1 hour. I think it's going to go on for like 30 more minutes. But I think the time set was only an hour. So just wanted to check if everybody's okay with us continuing, or shall we stop here and cover other slides maybe next time? What do you guys feel? If you guys are going to stay silent, I'm going to take that as yes and continue. Is that okay?
I'm okay with that. I'm not sure about the others.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you guys. So just 30 more minutes. We'll see how much we can cover. So yeah, we've been talking about hosting very simple websites as for now, but once you start getting into web hosting, there's a different kind of beast altogether, enterprise web hosting, because they have like heavy applications. There's a lot going on. For example, American Express. There's a lot of infrastructure that is built on the back end. The other website could be, your wow, can't think of any other side. SAP, Salesforce, all these kind of websites, they have huge infrastructure on the back end, so they cannot be deployed using these other simpler services. You need like a complicated, it becomes like an advanced level at that point. You need to use your own servers that you can use, for which you can use the AWS service, which is EC2. We're not going to talk about that in too much detail, but just want to, touch base and make sure that we at least touch this item quickly. So yeah, popular marketing websites or like media websites, for example, Apple, there's a lot going on the back end, right? There's so much of video content that is on the Apple website. And then there's a lot of like, sync up with the backend databases from where they can pull items, update your orders. So all those sort of things, right? There's a lot going on. And for those websites, they use EC2 or, some other kind of like servers, but they but they manage their own servers. They deploy their own servers rather than relying on AWS managed services. So they're still in AWS, but they deploy their own servers, web servers, if you will. Other kind of applications such as Expedia, Airbnb, Netflix, they are also like application heavy databases. There's a lot of content on the back end that needs to be displayed on the front end based on how users are interacting. So there's a lot of like dynamic nature, but on a completely different scale, on a very high scale. So those are the other kind of applications that can be deployed on EC2 machines. And these kind of websites are they need to dynamically scale resources, and they need to be highly available, because let's say your American Express, let's say that's the credit card that you use. If that application goes down, you would it won't be a good experience at that point. So obviously you need to make sure that they're highly available. And also enterprise using they use like multiple AWS services. They don't use just like a few, they use multiple AWS services, and they span across like multiple availability zones, regions, and that's why they need to be deployed in a completely different manner as compared to what we covered earlier. So because of that, they are highly available, scalable, and they are highly performant, and they require higher amount of management and administration than static websites. And then even the simpler dynamic websites or single page web applications, even from those. So because their infrastructure is so heavy. And what are these enterprise web hosting services best for? They're best for like multiple web servers across at least 2 data centers. So if your data is sitting between different data centers, it's best to use enterprise web hosting services. You need to scale using load balancing, auto scaling, or maybe there are external databases that you're looking or that you're pulling results from. There's a requirement of sustained high CPU utilization. There's going to be much processing, in other words. And then obviously you want the maximum control and the flexibility for your infrastructure. You can obviously, if you have a good development team, you can make a very reliable architecture even by using your unmanaged AWS services. Yeah, so that's another piece. We are not going to touch on enterprise web hosting, and we'll see how much we can touch on the other 3 system as well. But basically, we're going to talk about 3 different ways to deploy static websites on AWS. One is S3. We're just going to quickly cover those 3 services that we talked about. But basically, from the service standpoint, up till now, we were like looking at what can you use to deploy on these services, but what is in these services? So S3, the number one is, it is like an object storage. which has like a very simple web service interface, which you can use to, store or to retrieve any amount of data from anywhere on the web. Data is available in your S3 buckets as objects, and you can access it any way you want. As I was mentioning, it is designed to deliver 11 nines of durability, so very highly durable. You can put like trillions of objects in it, and you can access them worldwide easily with like very less effort. Simply load your index HTML or whatever your website files are on S3, and then configure the S3 bucket for web hosting, and off you go. I know, it says it looks like it's a simple process. There are some technicalities that go into it, but we'll walk through those. And then for Lightsail, it is the easiest way to launch and manage web servers using AWS. As we were talking, it gives you out of the box, it gives you virtual machine, SSD storage. That means your hard drives, data transfer, DNS management, static IP. So it offers all those things out of the box. You don't need to do anything separately. And also it is for, all of this comes for a very low and predictable price. You can predict like how much your bills are going to be based on the configuration that you use for Lightsail. And for the Amplify service, it provides your complete workflow for developing, deploying, and hosting single page web applications or static websites with like serverless backend. And then it can also be used to continuously deploy. As soon as you make updates to your website, you can, as soon as you make update to your website, it gets deployed right away. I mean, you can see the change, maybe I won't say right away, but in a very little time. And then you can deploy your web app to global audience using CDN, which is the cloud content delivery network. And you can work on new features without impacting the production users. So if your website is already live, you don't need to take it down and for some time and then have your new content pushed over. But you can keep on building your new content, your new features on the side. But as soon as it is ready to be deployed, you just use Amplify. And because of this continuous deployment functionality, you can just quickly, it will quickly become live for you. Okay. So before we move on to the demo, there's a lot of information and much AWS services as well. But just want to see if anybody has any questions till now before we jump into demo.
Can I just ask a quick question? So it's the difference between S3 and Amplify. They're both like, the only difference is that Amplify is it can allow for non-static websites, but they can only be one. They can only be one page, right? Versus S3 could have more than one page, but they have to be static.
No,
Is that the difference?
I think even with Amplify also, you can have multi-page websites. It's not that it has to be single page, because as I mentioned, it covers static websites. So if static website could have like multiple pages, so does Amplify. It allows to. But the good part of Amplify is that you, rather than putting your content or your index HTML file and all those CSS content in an S3 bucket, you can keep it in GitHub, Gitbucket, or few other Bitbucket. I think there are a few integrations that they have. And as soon as you make change in the front in the Gitbucket, or wherever the content is placed, it will start reflecting on your website right away. And that is the added functionality that Amplify provides. Otherwise, with S3, you still have to redo a few things, or if you're deploying through CloudFront, you have to wait for 24 hours to see your changes on the front end side. But Amplify deploys right away. That's why the continuous deployment piece on the Amplify side.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Lightsail does not offer that feature.
Lightsail. Lightsail, I think, does offer that feature as well. But again,
Okay.
Lightsail comes with a cost. Amplify does not comes with a cost. That's a huge piece.
Oh, Amplify is like totally free.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
So
okay.
if
Thanks
you
for sharing
deploy,
that.
yeah, if you deploy using Amplify, basically your content is stored somewhere else on GitHub, Bitbucket, wherever, and you're basically using their infrastructure again. So it's like next level to S3, but a little bit lighter version of Lightsail, if you put it the other way.
Okay,
Cool.
thank you.
Yeah, sure. All right, so I think it's good time that we move on to demo. I'm just gonna open my AWS console, and actually, you know what? Rather than just jumping right into it, I don't know if everybody has seen AWS website. I'm just gonna let me push this guy here. So I'm going to open the AWS just search for aws.com, and you end up in this website or a similar kind of website, but there's this place to log in, sign into console. You need to create your account. I have already created an account, so that's why I'm just going to go into that. So there's an account ID that is assigned to you, and username and password, etc. And then there's like a multi-factor authentication code, which is a good practice that if you are using it, you should follow. But just obviously adds a little bit of redundancy to the process, but makes it secure. So I would obviously suggest it. And then as soon as you get here, this is like your console home. You see they keep on changing this display. As you can see, they are they have added the cost and usage. It wasn't there earlier. Maybe like very recently it has changed. Earlier they had all these services that they have over here. All of these services, they had it in right here in the front, so you could just so there was, it kind of overwhelms you, honestly. And the other cool thing that I'm seeing right now is that you can move these panels over here, and you can kind of like customize your console home. So it's pretty cool. They always come up with like new, and actually, hey, you can add widgets as well. So it's pretty cool. I would suggest just create a free tier account, and then just go ahead and try different things. And if you have any questions, or if you want to talk about anything, feel free to ping me. Otherwise, we are talking about things here as well. So yeah, I'm gonna search for S3 to begin with. So search for S3, and then this S3 interface opens up, and then these are all your buckets. Just one noticeable item about buckets is that you can select which region they are going to be, which region this particular bucket will be in. But when you're on S3, you see that this is where you see which region you are in. But you see, when you're on S3, it says global, and all the regions are kind of like faded out, because S3 is like a global service. It's not based on a particular region, although your files will be present in a particular region. So yeah, it's kind of like a cash flow into kind of situation. But I hope I'm making myself clear with that, what that means. And the other thing, because S3 is global, you need to make sure that the bucket names that you keep here, they are unique globally. Yeah, so it's like it's like a huge effort, but somehow after a few tries, you able to find your uh, a good bucket name for your item. So all right, so we're going to talk about, I have this one, I created this bucket, but let's go through this bucket creation process also at the same time. Let's say I'm going to talk about, I'm going to keep a bucket name sample, and because it's a very generic name, and as we mentioned that your name should be unique, as soon as you come down, wow, for some reason it is valid. But let's see, let's go ahead with it. So you select your region. So I'm going to select US West 2, which is Oregon, but there are other regions as well. And few of them are faded out because because maybe I am honestly not sure, but if I have to guess, I think you cannot deploy or you cannot create buckets in these regions for some reason. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure on those though. But for us, let's do it on Oregon. And these object ownership, we're just gonna keep them disabled as of now. Keep this check mark if you want to block all the public access, but if you want to create a website, then it is better to turn this off. But as soon as you turn this off, because you are exposing your data on to public, you need to check this extra mark that yes, I acknowledge that I am making it accessible to the entire public. And then, so again, if you want to keep your buckets private, keep this one check mark. If not, otherwise keep this unchecked. Then bucket versioning, it just creates like a every time you update your files in a bucket, it creates like a version of that doc object. So it's always a good habit to kind of enable that. For the encryption piece, default is disabled. You can keep it disabled, but I would suggest keeping it enabled and using the simplest, the Amazon S3 key. You don't have to do much. Amazon S3 manages all the encryption. So your files, even if somebody gets access to it, they are still going to be encrypted. So let's say you only want to restrict like a few, let's say right now we are allowing everyone to access our bucket, right? But let's say this one is blocked and now you don't want to give access to everybody to your bucket. So that's why you would have this encrypted, and only those IP addresses or those networks from where you allow this bucket to be accessed, only they will be able to see the contents of your bucket. So it's always a good practice to have this turned on. I'm going to go back here and turn this one on here. And then there's some advanced settings. I think we're not going to talk about those right now, but it's like a different kind of setting. We can talk, if you guys really want to talk about it, we can feel free to discuss it later. But I think for now we're going to skip. So simple as that, create a bucket, give it a name, choose a region and choose some settings, and then click on create bucket. But hey, it says sample bucket with the same name already exists. So obviously sample was a very, very generic name. So that's why there's a bucket that already exists with it. So I'm going to create sample 1, 2, 3, 4 and see if that helps. It did. It usually, yeah, okay. So now you can see like a new web bucket here, simple 1, 2, 3, 4, sample 1, 2, 3, 4. And the region that we selected, objects can be public as we marked and the date it was created. And then, this was just an example of how to set up a bucket, but I have already set up a bucket for ourselves. I have this like, princemehra.com, and there's a reason why I have this way, because there's one domain that I purchased last year, which was kind of like sitting idle. So I wanted to use that, and that it's a good practice to have, whatever website you are creating to have the bucket name for the same as well. So I have this one princemehra.com, and then the other one was data4.ca. So I made sure that, whatever website I'm creating, I have the bucket name as the same as well. And inside you can see I have all these HTML website, HTML page, the images page, and the assets, some README. So basic structure, nothing fancy, very basic. So once you have what you need inside your S3 bucket, what you would do is you would go to properties, and over here you will, there are different things, encryption that we selected from when we were creating the bucket. Intelligent tiering is that, that there are different tiers of S3 buckets. You can, after certain days, if you want to archive your data, you can do that. So there are like different configurations that you can create here. We're not going to do that right now, but just something good to know. CloudTrail data events. We're not going to talk about these things, but maybe at some point I would want to cover these because they are Once you get into advanced level, that's when you need to play or understand what these options kind of are. So I think we will avoid that for now. And then towards the end, there's this option called static website hosting. For this, originally it was actually, let me show you for the website that we bucket that we created. Sample 1, 2, 3, 4. If you click on properties here, you will see that it is disabled originally, right? But because we want to use this bucket, I'm not going to use sample 1, 2, 3, 4, but I'm going to use the other one for our demo. I have went ahead and I have enabled it. So there are a few configurations that you can do. You need to enable it as soon as it is disabled, no options. As soon as you enable it, there are all these options that come up. So you're hosting a static website. And when I was saying, it looks easy that you can host a static website very easily, but there's some configuration or some, some logic that goes into it. So these are those options that you need to kind of like play with. So we are hosting a static website, and we are going to talk about, the index HTML page. We are just going to write that here. And then if there's an error document that you have, I do not have for my current website, but if you have, you can add that here as well. And then after that, you just, we can remove, we can skip this piece right now, redirection rules, and then save changes. So now, now that you have turned on the website hosting, what you will do is, let's just check if this website or this page is visible online. So there's this object URL that you can copy from, where was it? It was for the index HTML page. I went ahead and copied this object URL and got to a new tab, copied this one, and then press enter, and boom, we have a website live over here. So this using this index HTML object URL, you can find your website. So our website is live, but obviously, we don't want to give this to everybody. We want people to just search for whatever our domain name is and then find our website automatically, or maybe Google directs it to our website. So for that, what you do is, there's this, you go to Route 53, which is like we covered here, which is like the domain name service for AWS. Over here, I have bought my domain already, which is called, you can go to the dashboard, and then under domains, or maybe under the registered domains on the left hand side, you have these two. I have these two domains, and if you want to buy a new domain, you can just click on transfer register domain, or otherwise, if you already have a domain with another register, then you can transfer that over to AWS. This Prince Mara is what I transferred from HostGator. Very easy way to do it, but at least now I have both my domains at like one place. So you go to Prince Mara, and okay, I'm gonna confess something here. At this point, I was trying to make it work. It did not work. So somehow when I look for princemehra.com, it does not open this page. There is something off here, and I'm not able to figure out what that particular thing is. But I am going to give you an example of a website which is live already, and we, up till now, whatever we have understood, it's going to be exactly the same, but we're just going to use a different website as an example. For some reason, I'm going to figure this out, why princemehra.com is not working, because the object is accessible, but somehow the link routing is not working out for me. So I'm not going to spend or actually spend more time on that, but rather take you guys to a different website experience. So this was another website that I kind of put together for my business, and it again, it has the index HTML page as well, and in properties it would have the same thing, enable, it has bucket hosting and everything, all those things already laid out. But if we go to the Route 53 for this one, and I'm going to go to the other domain and not the Prince Mehra one, data4.ca. So over here it has, this is my address and all. I think we can skip that piece, but we go to the hosted zones. So when we go to the hosted zones, I have these two domains here. You can create like a new hosted zone for whichever new domain you purchase. And then inside the hosted zone, there are these kind of like different records that you would need to create. So, I create like, there are two records, these two, which usually exist automatically as soon as you create like a hosted zone. But there are all these other records that I had to add to make sure that, that I don't have to give anybody that encrypted link, but rather they look at data4.ca and they are able to find my website. So just gonna take an example here that, of this data4.ca. So I'm so sorry that I couldn't demo exactly what I wanted, but we have to kind of like find segue. But if we look at data4.ca, this is the website that is going to be live. And this is the same website that is that can be accessed from this index.html page. There are other pages as well, but I have those hidden right now. As of now, there's just this one static page website that I have it up and running. So yeah, basically this is one way that you can have your website up and running using S3 bucket and Route 53. So this is one thing that you might need to understand how to create records. And there are different articles out there. I'm not going to go ahead into detail because I myself is not 100% sure if I'm going to give you the 100% correct information. Otherwise, I would have figured out the princemehra.com domain as well. But once I will find out what these records are and how do they work exactly, then maybe I can give another session to you all, educating you on how this will be figured out. And if anybody else has any knowledge of how this works, honestly feel free to educate us, either in today's session or maybe in the next session sometime. Yeah. Okay, so this is one thing that, how do you use S3 and Route 53 to deploy your website? On the other hand, we also covered CloudFront. So basically, you will see in my Route 53, I do not have the S3 website listed anywhere, or S3, sorry, the S3 URL, the object URL, I don't have that listed anywhere on this one. But what I have is I have a CloudFront address. So how did that came out to be? I am just gonna go to CloudFront quickly and show you guys it's this console as well. So I have this one distribution already set up in place. You set up distributions on this one. So I already have a distribution set up in place. Actually, let's not do the new one. Let's just look at the one that is already set up. So distribution domain name comes in automatically, but on the back end, you can give it what are the alternate names that how, if a person looks for data4.ca or if a person looks for www.data4.ca, it would direct it to this CloudFront location. So now they can access this data4.ca from China, from Japan, from Australia, but it would point them to this data distribution domain name. And if I copy this one and I paste it here and then press enter, you will see it would actually display the same website. It's just that the address is not data4.ca. So what we are doing here is we are assigning data4.ca to route to this CloudFront location. And now because CloudFront is a delivery network, which is already, which caches the information on the edge location, eventually this website is going to be cached from whichever, edge location people are trying to access it. So that's how you bring CloudFront into picture as well. So basically you're seeing once you are on AWS, you can do everything. You host your website on AWS, you store all the data, you do all the routing, and you do the distribution into edge locations from inside AWS. So that is the kind of like a beauty of this Amazon Web Services, which the other hosting agents obviously won't give us. I have not seen, but again, there's Azure and other, but again, they're the cloud vendors. So yeah, so basically we covered one way how you can use S3. Sorry, I couldn't give you the exact demo that I wanted, but I hope whatever we talked about helped. So we understood how you use S3 and CloudFront to deploy your static website. We have one website up and running with that. Then there's another way called that we covered light sail. I'm not going to cover that right now, but I'm going to talk about this Amplify quickly and see if this can if we can cover this one. So for Amplify, as soon as you log in, this is one of the page that it brings you to. As you can see, it has two ways: build and ship. Build is that if you have to kind of like build your backend on AWS. I haven't done this, so I'm gonna ship a very simple static website, which is hosted on GitHub. It is not hosted on S3 because we don't have that kind of connection here. So it is hosted on GitHub. And let me see if I can show you guys. It was this one sample website that we wanted to load. It is actually this index.html, same file that we actually want to load, but it is hosted on GitHub right now. So all of that, sorry. So how we're going to deploy on that, let's walk through that. We have actually, we're in Oregon region, but I have already deployed this website from Canada region. So let's open that and you will see, wait, not from Canada region, only from California. Sorry, sometimes you need to, this is one hard thing. You need to remember which region you choose. So yeah, I have this one, when you click on all apps, I have this one website called sample website, which is online, up and running. So basically it gives you once actually. So I think it's better if we start from this one to begin with. So I'm gonna, there are two options that you get: host web app or build web app. So I'm going to go with host web app. This is what I did. I selected GitHub here and then continue. And then it asks me, that it prompts you to connect your GitHub account with AWS, and you go through that integration process. Then it gives you all those repositories that you have in your GitHub. As you can see, we have this sample website, and under my name we have 6 repositories: test dev 1, hackathon, and others. But we are concerned about the sample website, right? So this is what we're going to refer here, sample website. And then the branch that you guys are, wherever your content is. So I'm going to refer the master branch here, and then click on next. I'm not going to do that because I'm already kind of like accessing this sample website, but actually there's one other step. Yeah, so this was one of the steps that they had build and test settings. I didn't change anything in this, and there are things that you can play around with this for more advanced things. But I just left it as is and clicked on next, and then it will, oh, just need to acknowledge here. Then it will show you, this final review screen that you can use to save and deploy. So I'm not going to do that, but after I would do this, there's this, just like a new tab that opens up for my sample website, whatever the name I gave earlier. And then using this link, using this link, I can access my other website, which is actually sitting in GitHub, but can be accessed from AWS Amplify on internet. So let's see if we can do that. This one, ppm.dataflow.ca. So a different link, but you see it, it opens up the web app for us. Oh, sorry, the website for us. So again, you don't have to change, you don't have to host data in S3 or store data in S3. If you have your website in GitHub, or you are kind of like working on a project, let's say you have a Jupyter notebook and that goes along with the index file, you can access that, or you can deploy that using AWS Amplify. And there was one other thing that I want to mention, was that as we talked about AWS Amplify, that these are used for like continuous development or continuous integration. So as soon as I change anything in the index.html file here, let's see if we can do that. So let's say project analytics. I'm going to change the title of the website. So I'm going to go ahead and commit changes here. Before we do that, you will see that this website is currently deployed. It is all these 4 checks are checked for us. But once I'm going to do this, commit changes done, the project analytics name has been changed, you will see that this will start getting provisioned. So as soon as you change something on the back end on the website, your website will start deploying automatically. It will sense it that there's some change happen in the GitHub repository, and it will start rendering the new page. It's going to take maybe like 2 minutes, but it will show us the right now you can see it is showing us project A. Once it is deployed, it should show us the project analytics over here. There was a change that we did. So we'll just wait for it for maybe like, I think it would honestly take a minute.
So could I just ask a quick question while we're waiting?
Please.
You mentioned earlier about the content delivery network. When you connect to GitHub and you said it could take 2 minutes, like, does it propagate to all the edges, at different, AWS regions? How, basically what I'm asking is like, how would you prevent someone that's trying to access a cached version of it? How do you prevent them from viewing the old website? Like, how do you ensure that even though it's cached, they get the new GitHub that you just deployed?
I see. So when we are deploying using AWS Amplify, we are actually not using Cloudfront. Amplify itself is kind of like, I think I'm saying it right, is like the enhancement, won't say enhancement, but is using Cloudfront underneath. So you don't have to make changes to Cloudfront. It will automatically deploy all those changes, and all the edge locations will start seeing the new update as soon as this verify hits. So this is, this is the beauty of the entire infrastructure. So now I'm going to click on this, and as you can see, it changed to project A to project analytics. So change was made in GitHub, not anywhere else. You're kind of like in your development environment. You can obviously make change in VS Code or whichever editor ID you're using. push the your code into the updated GitHub version, and then as within like maybe 1 minute while we were even answering the question, it was kind of like verified. So continuous integration, continuous deployment. That's what is the beauty of Amplify. And again, as you see, with S3, there were way too many clicks that you have to do. You need to make sure that, CloudFront is set up. You need to make sure, well, Route 53, you still have to set up, but, there is much less, touch experience when you're deploying using Amplify. And the beauty is that you can not just deploy static websites. You can actually build an application. I haven't tried that, but that'll be pretty cool to do. And you can also deploy web applications, not just static websites. So even dynamic applications can be deployed. So that's why I was when I mentioned all of these, I personally feel that static website on S3 is basic. Then comes light sail, but I think Amplify is kind of like the game changer, that you don't have to do much, but still your websites get deployed continuously.
So if I were to use S3, could I use like FTP to make it upload faster?
So if you use S3, when you say use FTP to upload faster into S3,
Yeah.
I think so, but I think the better way is actually going to be through an SDK. SDK is going to be much faster than an FTP. Also, it depends upon the size of the file as well.
Okay.
Yeah. I hope I am, I think it depends upon size, and at the same time, it'll be better using an SDK. That's personally my opinion. I haven't tried the FTP piece, but if you're using FTP, you're kind of like reading data from somewhere. So I don't know if you would want to broadcast that as your website, or what the use case would be. But I think you might want to do a little bit of more research on that, and I'll do it too, and see if I can find something. I'll be able to answer those questions. Cool.
Okay, and also another question.
Sure.
Oh, sorry, I just Googled it, and I think you can. S3, AWS transfer for FTP and FTPS. So yeah, okay, I guess I answered my own question. You can.
Yeah, I think you can. Yeah, I was just not sure which one is going to be a faster way.
Okay.
Yeah.
My other question is, so Amplify is free. Why would Amazon make Amplify free, but they're charging for S3 and Light? So given that they still, regardless of the cloud deployment, they still have to host on their server. So like, who's paying for that hosting cost for Amplify?
I think the route 53 fees that you're paying, that is kind of like paying for your Amplify fees as well. But at the same time, I don't think that there is an extra cost to it that goes into Amplify. There are support documents. I am not sure like who would be paying for the fees, but I think it will be good to maybe read about that once. I haven't read about that personally, but we can read about that and find out how do you actually pay for this Amplify kind of service by yourself.
Okay, I'll take a look. Yeah, thanks so much for going through that.
Sure. I think one thing is that because you're not storing data on Amazon, right? So you're storing data somewhere outside, or your website somewhere outside. In this example, it was GitHub. And then the other thing is that they already have the infrastructure set up that if they, I think it's like a way to invite people to come and build using AWS Amplify, help them by giving them a simpler interface so that they come and build on it, but end up using other AWS services, which would actually incur cost to the customer. I think that is another way to look at it.
Like they're basically like trying to entice you to get on their platform.
Yeah,
Okay.
and honestly, these cloud platforms, they do that a lot. That they give you like very cheap service to begin with, just to have you on their cloud and have you all the infrastructure built on the cloud. Because once you have built all the infrastructure on a particular cloud, it would be difficult to move to a different one, right? So they want to allure you to begin with, but then it is just my understanding, but also there could be, you know, other way that they are making money for Amplify.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but also the you know, the hosting that you do on AWS, that also has to that also incurs cost for you a little bit, not a whole lot, but yeah. Basically, I think what they're doing is their infrastructure is already laid out. They are just kind of like using that to provide a simpler interface to end users, to developers personally. Cool. So yeah, that was the demo. I'm so sorry that I couldn't actually you know, do the demo for the actual website that I wanted to do. I'll try to figure out what's wrong with that, just from my personal knowledge as well. And if you guys once I'll figure out, I'll you know, obviously try to tell you as well. And then towards the end, we're going to share this presentation as well. But then there are some tutorials and reference links, something that I used to, you know, to get a better understanding. This article for Lytix was very useful in understanding content delivery network. So feel free to, you know, go through this article. And then there are different tutorials by AWS that you can use to deploy websites, to deploy web apps using Lightsail, using Amplify, or using S3. So feel free to go through these. And otherwise, you know, there are other resources out there that you can use. These are just a few that I am gonna put out here for your reference. Cool. So yeah, I think with that, I am done. It is, I think it marks the end of the session. We went a lot of time over. I'm sorry for that, but I hope that, you know, whatever I was trying to educate you with, it came in. And sorry we couldn't do the correct demo, but hopefully it was worth the watch. Oh, all right. Anybody else have any questions, or before we part? No. Okay.
So
Yeah.
I'm just going to stop recording now.